Welcome back to the Matthew Ray Show. This week on the show, we will recap last weekend's top games and talk about the major upset that happened at Ohio Stadium, as well as check in on how the NCAA men's soccer championships are going and get you set for the final weekend of the regular season in college football. But let's start with the showdown that took place at the Shoe Saturday afternoon. Michigan State was without fifth-year senior starting quarterback Connor Cook, who was out with a right shoulder injury. But that was not a problem for the Spartans. Backup quarterback Tyler O'Connor got the start and went 7 for 12, passing for 89 yards and 1 touchdown. Running back Gerald Holmes on 14 carries rushed for 65 yards and 1 touchdown. For the Buckeyes, they came in to the game, I think, overconfident about not having to face Connor Cook. But as we saw, the offense could not get anything going. Michigan State stacked the box. I mean, they probably do have the best front seven in college football, and that was a tough time for Ezekiel Elliott, which we will talk about momentarily and get to his comments. But with Heisman hopeful Ezekiel Elliott only getting 33 yards on 12 carries. Quarterback JT Barrett went 9 for 16 with 1 touchdown. Elliott was very unhappy during his post-game press conference, calling out his coaches and saying, "I did not know what we were doing." Now, he did spend Monday and Tuesday last week in the hospital, so I don't know if that had something to do with it, but to call out your coaches the way he did, I think, is unacceptable. I mean, you can have a meeting with your coaches, that's no problem. But when you call them out in front of the media, I think is not very good maturity. And I mean, if he expects to play at the next level, that can't happen. And I mean, NFL scouts commented on it, and their comments were not very good about it. But I mean, I quote, "There's no chance I will come back next year," is what Elliott said, and I don't think he was going to come back anyway. They win that game or they lose that game like they did. I don't think he was going to come back anyway. But Elliott did later apologize Monday afternoon. But Coach Meyer got fielded questions during his weekly news conference, and he addressed the situation very professionally. And I quote, "Zeke gets a microphone stuck in his face. We don't condone that. He came to me and apologized. We've squashed that." Now, my question to Urban is, have you really squashed that? Is because obviously we won't see that until Saturday on how they play. I don't think that is leaving a very good impression on the rest of the team going in to the biggest game of the year each year. Everyone circles it on the calendar, but it'll wait to be seen what happens Saturday afternoon up in Ann Arbor. But putting the Michigan State game behind Ohio State, they now have to focus in on the biggest challenge, I believe, this year. Putting Michigan in the win column in a rivalry game, a game that means a ton in both states. Michigan comes in off a win in Happy Valley last Saturday, 28-16 over Penn State. The Buckeyes need a win in Ann Arbor, a Michigan State loss at home, to make it into the Big Ten title game against Iowa, who punched their ticket last Saturday at home, 40-20 over Purdue. Coming into the final week of the regular season, my top 6 looks like this. Clemson sitting at top. Alabama sitting at number 2. Oklahoma at 3. Michigan State at 4 off their huge win. I mean, they do have 3 very good quality wins. They have a win at home against Oregon. They have the win on the last second play at Michigan. But they do have that last second loss at Nebraska. And then obviously with the big win Saturday here in Columbus. At 5 I have Iowa. And at 6 I have Baylor. Now, you're probably sitting there thinking, where's Notre Dame? Well, Notre Dame did not impress me the last 2 weeks. I mean, they escaped with a win Saturday against Boston College at Fenway. But the week before, playing Wake Forest, they didn't. It was, I think, 28-7. That is not a game that Wake Forest should be even close in. But we will have to see. This weekend is their last resume builder, as I like to say, to impress the committees, because they do not have a championship game. So we will have to see. Let's take a look at this week's top matchups. Let's start with Bedlam. That will have 3rd-ranked Oklahoma taking on 11th-ranked Oklahoma State. It'll be an interesting game, in my opinion. I mean, you got the Sooners coming into the weekend off a huge win over TCU at home, 30-29. In the later stages of the fourth quarter, they did let it slip away and get closer. But quarterback Baker Mayfield had to leave the game in the first half due to a head injury. Looking at some media reports, he did pass all concussion protocols and looks like he will be ready for the game Saturday night in Stillwater. The Cowboys come into the Bedlam series off a tough loss to Baylor. Now, while watching that game Saturday, I kind of sat there and I thought, now is Baylor really rebounding after the loss to Oklahoma, the week before, or is it not a good night for the Cowboys in Oklahoma State? So they lost a tough game, 45-35 to Baylor. The other big matchup that we're going to see this weekend is probably a deciding factor in the college football playoff, in my opinion. You got the 6th-ranked Notre Dame Fighting Irish traveling out to Palo Alto to take on 9th-ranked Stanford. The Fighting Irish come in off a win against Boston College, 19-6. But Irish running back C.J. Prosett left the game with an injury, and we are still trying to confirm if he is going to play or not this weekend. If he does not, that is a big loss for Notre Dame's offense. I mean, for Stanford, you have running back Christian McCaffrey, who has been playing pretty well lately. And if he can put another big game together this weekend and in the Pac-12 championship, I think he could get himself back up into the Heisman race. For Stanford, they come in rebounding off a tough, well, they won, but coming in 2 weeks ago, losing to Oregon at home, that game's going to hurt them. I know they had a loss first game of the year at Northwestern, but I don't think the committee can really look at that game. That is a 9 a.m. start time in Palo Alto, so I'll give them that game. Now switching directions, and we're going to take a look now at the NCAA Men's Soccer Championships. The top-seeded Wake Forest Demon Deacons got a huge win Saturday to get their tournament started, or Sunday, started over the Charlotte 49ers at home, with the lone goal being scored by sophomore, in the 83rd minute by sophomore John Vaqueros. Goalkeeper Alec Farrell faced 7 shots and had 7 saves for the Deacs. The Deacs will now face 16th ranked Indiana at home Sunday at Spry Stadium in Winston-Salem. The winner of the Indiana-Wake Forest matchup will move on to the Elite Eight and will face either Ohio State or Stanford next weekend for a spot in the Final Four and a trip to Kansas City and College Cup. A quick fact: the ACC still has 6 teams in the tournament, and they are Wake Forest, North Carolina, Boston College, Syracuse, Notre Dame, and Clemson. Notre Dame has a huge matchup this weekend against Maryland. That's a game I will be keeping my eye on, and the game I'm circling that could be a huge game for both teams, and is North Carolina taking on Creighton. That game should be an unbelievable atmosphere. We would like to thank you for joining us for another episode of the Matthew Rice Show. Follow me on Twitter at MatthewRice3 and on Instagram at Riggedy_Rice Jr. for the latest show updates and much, much more on the world of college sports. Have a great Thanksgiving holiday weekend.